not taking into account, because I didn't understand at that point, that no matter what I saw had to be filtered through the way I perceived things. And it's interesting because, like most people, I thought that my eyes were just a window to the outside, and if I saw something, somebody looking a certain way or doing a certain thing or saying something, that was actually what's happening. Turns out, no, that's not what was happening. So what was happening was that I was filtering it through my perceptions, and that affected my relationships. It affected my relationships with my wife. It affected my relationships with my kids. It affected my relationships with my law partners. And one of the, like, as I look back now in 6 or 7 years, one of the huge changes was that I can enjoy people, because as I've unwound that and said, nah, that's me, and that's just how I saw things, then, there's no more somebody doing onto me. It's just another person out there that's, going through their stuff and struggling and doing the things they do just like I'm doing. With that, with that, for me, that was a way that I enjoyed people, because I saw them then as, people, and as much as this sounds kind of strange, I think it's true for everybody, that I was sure that, the whole list of people that I gave you, were acting, against me in ways. And no, they weren't. They're just, doing their thing just like me.
So you're able to trust more people and get to have more friends.
Oh, definitely. Trust is probably a good way to put it. Yeah. Trust and care. Those two are big parts of it that I say are two of the big things that, I can think back have changed dramatically for me over the years.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, the biggest thing is I became a better listener. I would actually, before it, my mind would be moving 100 miles an hour, whereas I'm already finishing their sentence. Now I'm giving them the respect of, what, let me hear everything they had to say. So I'm not assuming, I'm hearing everything. Then before I make an assumption, I'll ask a question like, hey, do you mean this? And then I have no problem interacting, because I know we're both on the same page. Before I would assume that I'm on the same page with them, and I'm just like, I'm just talking. Hey, listen, oh wait, you're not on the same page as me? Something's wrong with you. Now it's more like, I can understand, where you're coming from, because now I'm taking the time to understand what they're saying and their point of view, not just what they're saying and what I think they're saying.
Yep.
And I really take the time to understand what they're saying, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I share that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and it helps you deal with people better. It really does. When you're able to do that genuinely, you really get to understand and know where they're coming from, and then try to do everything in a positive way. Everything continues to move in a positive flow.
Yep. This is, if you're ever going to do anything, you're going to do it with other people. Like make kids, make a business, and the only way that's ever going to, unless tennis. The only way that's going to happen is if you find that place where you can stand together. And it's true, if you don't ask questions and find out, you don't really know what they're even saying, or what what they're offering. And when you do that, you can find that common ground.
That's important.
Yep, I agree.
So, have you ever had any of your kids float?
I've had the three oldest. Jaden is 12. She hasn't floated yet.
Okay.
The older kids love it. And what happened, I don't know if you were here last year, is as my son was both a junior and a senior at the local high school, and he went back to high school with his experiences, we started to see a huge influx of high school kids come in. From, well, not just the kids, the high school teachers came in as well. And once that happened, it was like wildfire.
Oh, I can imagine. So now let me ask you this. Now, you being an adult, raising your son, what was something that floating taught him that helped him realize But like you're like, damn, I wish I was when I was his age, I was able to see that. Like, what do you think? You know, it was like an epiphany for him because I believe when you go in the float tank, you know, not maybe not every single time, but you're gonna have just epiphanies in how to deal with things and how to handle things. And what was it that you saw got triggered in him when you started, you know, going floating, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I can because he'd be the best person to answer that. But I can say that for him, like I was at that high school age, he was buzzing as driven, mind racing, 1,000 miles a minute, getting his thoughts out there, and with a similar really fast speech. He slowed down a bit.
Yeah.
You can see it. He was less reactive at home. But in terms of for him, what what's meant to him, ask him. Yeah.
Well, that's really the main point is you become less reactive, you know, out of nowhere. You know, you're really taking your time to digest life.
Yeah, and say it like this: that it's not like you become less reactive, but that it becomes more of a choice, a deliberate. Because if you think about this thing we talked about before about people perceiving, and that's all they do, they react based on those perceptions. And so if you can be in charge of that and make sure that what you actually see, using what you talked about, actually communicating with people and finding out, if you can see that that's what's actually happening, well, then you're not going to be thrown around by just because you think you saw something. You'd be more deliberate about it.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
of course. So, what is? I'm sooner or later I'm gonna take these mental art classes. Sooner or later, I promise you. But what do you recommend as far as before I take that? Anything as far as educational wise, or like for the people that aren't ready yet? What would you say? Like, listen, read this and that'll help you, or take a look at this video. This will help you maybe prepare more because it's a big leap. Listen, it's as crazy as it sounds. I still white knuckle before I go inside the float. Like, I take a deep breath and I get ready to, and then I just close and
that is so interesting, and it's interesting, right? Because it's like we get people who hear about floating as I don't know what to say other than it's all good and it's just great, and you're gonna get you're gonna reach inner peace in there and have all epiphany. And you know what? When you're in there, it's just you in there. The whole point of floating is there's no external stimulation, so you're in there with your own thoughts.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, the ugly, however you put it in those categories, they're in there with you. And so some of the things that you look at in the tank are things that say they're just not working as for you. They're just not serving you well. So I think people are sometimes surprised. Like, they'll come out, they'll have just great floats, and then they'll come out and they'll say, man, this was I was in there and I was thinking about this, and and I don't know where that came from, or it's been coming up again in my life. Over and over again. So the float experience is where we recommend people start, because that's where they start to get that awareness and kind of bring back or reinvigorate or reopen up an awareness that's already been with them their whole life. They're kind of getting back in touch with the kind of awareness that they already have in the deeper parts of thought, and then they come out, and like me, when I came out of the float tank, I was, well, maybe not the first time, but I was like, all right, what do I do now? How do I understand what happened, and how do I apply it so that, and I had a whole list of things, so that I'm not bumping my heads against my law partners, I'm not bumping heads against my wife, I'm being a better dad, and there was probably more on the list, but those were the three kind of big ones for me. And so that's where our seminars and classes come, because from there we build a language and understanding so that you can be deliberate about what you want to accomplish instead of being thrown around by those, you can call them, the early, the thoughts we put in when we were about this high.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yep.
Well, listen, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
I love you.
Yeah.
No problem.
Love you too,
Yeah,
man.
the handshake down.
All right. Thanks, all.
No problem.